Alright, let's kick things off in Sicily, the birthplace of the Mafia as we know it. Picture yourself back in the day, 19th century Sicily. It was a wild place, man. The Italian government, they were weak, corrupt, couldn't protect their own people. So, what happens? People band together for protection, they form these groups, and boom, the Mafia is born. These guys, they weren't messing around. They lived by a strict code of silence, Omertà. You don't snitch, you don't talk to the cops, you handle your business internally. And if you break that code, let's just say they had their ways of dealing with it and they weren't pretty. The Sicilian Mafia, they were like a state within a state. They controlled everything, protection rackets, gambling, smuggling, you name it. They had their fingers in all the pies, man. And if you crossed them, well, you might just end up sleeping with the fishes. Now we gotta talk about the Godfathers, right? These were the bosses, the top dogs, the guys calling the shots. Guys like Don Vito Corleone from The Godfather, that wasn't just a fictional character, man. It was based on real dudes, powerful men who commanded respect and, let's be honest, instilled a whole lot of fear. One of the most infamous things about the Sicilian Mafia was their use of violence. They weren't afraid to get their hands dirty, to use intimidation and brute force to get what they wanted. We're talking bombings, shootings, disappearances, you name it, they did it. But here's the thing about the Mafia, they weren't just thugs. They had this weird, twisted sense of honor and tradition. They had their own rules, their own code of conduct. It was like a brotherhood, a family, albeit a very dangerous one. Over the years, the Sicilian Mafia has had its ups and downs. They've been weakened by crackdowns from the Italian government, internal feuds, all that stuff, but don't let that fool you. They're still out there, lurking in the shadows, pulling strings and making money. Now, some people might romanticize the Mafia, see them as these cool, powerful figures. But let's be real, man, these guys are criminals. They're responsible for a lot of pain and suffering. They're not something to admire. But their story, man, it's fascinating. It's a story about power, corruption, and the dark side of human nature. Alright, let's hop over to the east, to Japan, home of the Yakuza. Now these guys are different, man. They're like the anti-Sicilian Mafia. They're not afraid of the public eye. In fact, they embrace it. They have offices, business cards, even their own magazines. The Yakuza, they're all about tradition, man. They have their own rituals, their own code of honor, and of course, their infamous tattoos. Those tattoos, man, they're like a badge of honor, a symbol of their commitment to the group. Now, don't let the suits and ties fool you. The Yakuza, they're involved in some serious stuff. Drug trafficking, gambling, extortion, you name it. They're like a Japanese version of the mob, but with more tattoos and a whole lot more ceremony. One of the things that sets the Yakuza apart is their strict hierarchy. It's like a pyramid, man, with the Oyabun, the boss, at the top, and then layers of underbosses and soldiers below him. Loyalty is huge with these guys. You don't cross your Oyabun ever. The Yakuza, they're also known for their extreme violence. They're not afraid to use swords, guns, or even their bare hands to get what they want. They have this thing called yubitsume, where they cut off a portion of their own finger as a form of apology or punishment. Talk about commitment, man. But here's the thing about the Yakuza, they're not just criminals. They also have a weird, twisted sense of justice. They often step in to provide order in situations where the police can't or won't get involved. It's like they're this strange, parallel law enforcement agency. Over the years, the Yakuza have been the subject of numerous crackdowns by the Japanese government. But they're resilient, man. They always seem to find a way to adapt and survive. They're a fascinating and complex group, man. They're a product of Japanese culture, with its emphasis on honor, loyalty, and tradition. But they're also ruthless criminals who will stop at nothing to protect their interests. Now, let's head over to Russia, home of the Russian Mafia, or as they're known in some circles, the Bratva. These guys, man, they're like the boogeymen of the underworld. They're shrouded in secrecy, known for their ruthlessness, and they have a reach that extends far beyond Russia's borders. The Russian Mafia, their roots go way back to the days of the Tsars, but they really came into their own during the chaos and upheaval of the Soviet Union's collapse. When the Iron Curtain fell, man, all hell broke loose. The old rules didn't apply anymore, and these guys, they were ready to capitalize on the chaos. They seized control of state-owned assets, they muscled in on new businesses, and they built up massive criminal empires. They were involved in everything from arms trafficking to drug smuggling to money laundering. They were like sharks in a feeding frenzy, man. One of the things that makes the Russian Mafia so dangerous is their willingness to use extreme violence. They don't mess around with warnings or threats. They go straight for the jugular, man. They're known for their contract killings, their brutal shakedowns, and their utter disregard for human life. They're also incredibly disciplined and organized. They operate in cells, kind of like terrorist groups, with strict chains of command and a code of silence that would make the Sicilian Mafia proud. And here's the really scary part. They've infiltrated governments, law enforcement agencies, and businesses all over the world. They have fingers in every pie, man, and they're not afraid to use their influence to get what they want. The Russian Mafia, they're a product of their environment. They were forged in the crucible of Soviet oppression, and they emerged as hardened criminals, ready to take on the world. All right, let's move south now, down to Mexico, where we've got the cartels. These guys are a different breed, man. They're all about the drug trade, and they've turned it into a multi-billion-dollar industry. We're talking cocaine, heroin, meth, fentanyl, you name it, they move it. And they're not afraid to protect their turf with a level of violence that's just plain terrifying. The Mexican cartels, they've been around for decades, but they've really exploded in power and influence in recent years. They've infiltrated governments, they've corrupted law enforcement, and they've turned entire regions of Mexico into their own personal fiefdom. These guys, they have more money than God, and they use it to buy weapons, to bribe officials, and to wage war on their rivals. We're talking full-on military-grade hardware, man-assault rifles, grenades, even rocket launchers. They're basically mini armies, answerable to no one. And the violence, man, it's off the charts. We're talking beheadings, dismemberments, mass killings, stuff that would make even the most hardened gangster cringe. They're ruthless, they're brutal, and they don't care who gets caught in the crossfire. One of the most notorious figures in the cartel world is Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, the former leader of the Sinaloa cartel. This guy, man, he was like a ghost, always one step ahead of the law. He escaped from prison twice, once through a tunnel that stretched for a mile. They finally caught him, but his legend lives on. The Mexican cartels, they're a symptom of a much larger problem, the insatiable demand for drugs in the United States and beyond. As long as there's money to be made, these guys will be there to supply the product, no matter the cost. Finally, let's head over to China, where we've got the triads. These guys are old school, man, with roots that stretch back centuries. They're steeped in tradition, secrecy, and a code of loyalty that's as strong as steel. But they're also involved in some seriously shady stuff. Drug trafficking, human smuggling, extortion, you name it. The triads, they're like a secret society, with their own rituals, symbols, and oaths. They're notoriously difficult to infiltrate, and their members are bound by a code of silence that's almost impossible to break. They originated in China, but they've spread their tentacles all over the world, following the flow of Chinese immigrants and establishing themselves in new territories. They're particularly active in Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Southeast Asia, but they've also got a presence in Europe, North America, and Australia. One of the things that makes the triads so successful is their ability to adapt to changing circumstances. They've gone from smuggling opium in the 19th century to trafficking heroin in the 20th century to running online gambling operations in the 21st century. They're always one step ahead of the game. Law enforcement agencies around the world have been trying to dismantle the triads for decades, but they're a slippery bunch. They're experts in compartmentalization. So even if they do manage to take down one cell, it's only a matter of time before another one pops up in its place. The triads are a fascinating and enigmatic group, steeped in history and shrouded in secrecy. They're a reminder that organized crime is a global phenomenon and that the battle against it is far from over. That's it for today, folks. We've taken a deep dive into the dark and dangerous world of organized crime, exploring some of the most notorious mafia groups on the planet. From the streets of Sicily to the alleys of Tokyo, from the mountains of Mexico to the bustling cities of China, these groups have left their mark on history, and they continue to operate in the shadows, shaping the world in ways we may never fully understand. Thanks for watching. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content. Let us know in the comments which mafia organization you found the most intriguing. And as always, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.